Okay, so welcome to today's webcast entitled The Opportunity at Community Colleges to Leverage ATE Grants. And it is my pleasure to serve as the moderator. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne. All right, this webcast, as you know, is being recorded for placement on the CCPI-STEM website. While we are waiting to get started, please make sure you're on mute and type your name and affiliation in the chat box if you have not done so already. Toward the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session where you can type your questions in the chat box. So we ask you to hold them for then, because we want to make sure, be mindful of everybody's time. What I'll do is I'll read the question aloud for Shane to answer. Okay. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker today, Shane Kirby, who wears many hats, so we're very fortunate to have him today. He is the Director of Advancement Partnerships at Columbus State Community College in Ohio. He is working with Dr. Rodriguez, who is on the call here, the webcast, on developing the grant modules for the CCPI project. He is also, because he doesn't sleep, is Executive Director of 10,000 Small Business Programs in Columbus. He's led the development on 16 NSF AT grants since 2014. And as I said, I'm today's moderator, and I am Senior Professor Emeriti at Union College in New Jersey. It used to be Union County College, and I'm very happy that my colleague is here. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And so today's topics are really four, and then we'll open it up the Q&A, but I'm going to just launch it to Shane saying why grants are important to community colleges, and take it away, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne, and thanks everybody for joining today. I'm really excited to get to share this information. You know, it's something I've talked about a lot with the NSF ATE program. It's been a great community to be involved in. And we're going to start by talking about why grants are important to community colleges. And the way I'd respond to this question, I wanted to put a quote up here from Dr. David Harrison, who's the president at Columbus State Community College. And he talked about how grants are an excellent catalyst for innovation within your institution and a mechanism to identify innovative leaders. Grant involvement can detect who faculty leaders might be and who other thought partners might be at your institution. This can be especially important for individuals in new leadership roles. This quote really represents our experience with grants at Columbus State. It has been a great catalyst to do change management, to implement new programs. It's been a great mechanism to identify thought partners throughout the institution in every area, and really a great learning experience for new individuals and new leaders alike to learn the college and to learn some of the new innovations that are going on. To kind of expand on this a little bit more, the grants that we have, they allow our institutions to innovate beyond our normal means and beyond our existing resources. As many of you know, community colleges are funded to run the next semester's courses. Grants can be that almost venture capital to explore the innovations at your campus and fund large new initiatives that may exist. These can be small or large projects, and often the key I tell a lot of folks is the planning process can often be as valuable as the funding itself. There's a domino effect that's created. And once you have that first initiative funded or the initial investment, additional funding becomes much more readily available. As an example, Columbus State, we had a program that was developing a work study model almost 8 years ago in modern manufacturing. We've leveraged that initial funding to 3 additional ATE grants now, 1 in IT, 1 in automotive, and a follow-up to our manufacturing area to expand it to more career awareness. Getting everything started is really the key. And funders, both public and private, are more motivated by organizations that have some initial funding underway. The other thing I always tell colleges is don't be discouraged if you're not funded the first time. It often takes multiple attempts, sometimes to get that first grant, and the process is going to be really valuable. And one of the things I specifically point to is with the NSF ATE program, the feedback process is invaluable. You get great feedback from the reviewers when you do apply, and they'll help you shape the next proposal that you have going in. And even if you are funded, the faculty or the reviewer feedback can be very important on how to hone your proposal in future years and how to hone your project. The other thing I'd mention is that prestige and recognition from grants can help enhance the public image of the institution and also creates a greater sense of pride for the individuals that are working on the projects. So the NSF ATE grant opportunity itself, for those of you that were on last week, Dr. Carter had a great explanation of a lot of these points, but just to kind of reboot a little bit of that, the National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Program, or NSF ATE, it has a specific focus on two-year colleges, and it supports innovative approaches for highly skilled technician level education in non-health STEM industries. And so they can do a lot of different things. They can help you develop new curricula or enhance curricula or develop a thread of a new technology. They can help you get new equipment to train technicians in more innovative ways. They can help you launch or expand a program. They could help you develop collaboration with other colleges and with your industry partners. And they also help to create and expand equity best practices to create a more diverse workforce. There's been a downward trend recently in new colleges applying with everything going on with COVID, the pandemic, and everything else. And there's a lowering of some applications within NSF agencies, especially from community colleges. Meanwhile, the demand for new skilled technicians is only increasing, and employers are facing the gaps for in-demand talent, as we all know. Federal funding at the same time is actually increasing for STEM level education. Community colleges are uniquely positioned to address this gap, and many should be taking better advantage of the ATE opportunity in particularly when looking at how to fund some of their new innovative programs and address the current demand. The next thing I'll kind of go into is, so you kind of understand the NSF program, how do I get started? The first thing I always tell everybody is start at the beginning and read the RFP. It's sometimes a lot of information, but there's a link to the RFP here on the slide deck. As Dr. Hawthorne mentioned, the slides will be shared later, and all of this is pretty easy to find if you do a search. There's 5 primary tracks for funding within the ATE program. If this is your first grant with ATE, I'd probably look at either 1 or 2, the small projects for new institutions or projects tracks. The RFP link, like I said, is here. There's some great resources out there to help you prepare for a proposal, such as the one from ATE Central I referenced here on the slide. As a brief just update, the proposal for this year is due October 5th. So we have a little bit of time, but it's definitely the right time to start getting started and start thinking about these things. So you're interested in looking at this program for your college. How do you get organized? The steps that I always provide to colleges when I'm kind of walking them through this process is first determine your priorities and align whatever type of idea you have to your strategic plan and make sure there is that strong alignment. Organize a team, develop a concept paper, research what's funded, share your concept, and engage resources. We'll go through these in a little more detail in the following slides. Sorry, I'm not clicking for it on here. So determining your priorities, you want to think about what you want to accomplish and how does it align to your mission. I always tell colleges to start with your strategic plan, look at departmental and divisional priorities.
You know what? I have all this.
And look where your opportunities are. Also analyze what technician needs exist for employees in your region. The second step is to organize your team. This will look different at every college. At a large college, you might have a grants office, you might have experienced faculty. At newer colleges or colleges that don't have grants offices, you might have to think a little more creatively on how to build a team. The first step is to identify a champion. Determine who your faculty lead would be and what faculty are motivated to help lead the charge really with the initiative. This helps a lot of times in identifying your PI. The next piece is to engage an executive advocate on your leadership team to have executive level support for the project. Create a support team for the team that's going to be writing this proposal. Identify administrative support you may have throughout the college with writing assistants, with data assistants, somebody that can help organize meetings and engage partners. This might come from parts of people's times initially, and hopefully as you develop your grants operation or grant strategy, this can take better shape. But there's a lot of creative ways you can look at this. Additionally, I encourage a lot of colleges that are new to this and smaller colleges to consider consortium proposals. You can a lot of times find a pooling of resources when you work with other colleges, and partnering with another institution can create a more well-balanced team, both from an experience side in the technology as well as an experience side from kind of the grants or project deployment phase. One of the key pieces is external partners. We'll talk a little bit here in a minute about how to engage other community colleges that may be already in the NSF community, but another big piece is employers. Having industry-led solutions are critical in the ATE program and should be deliberate activities and have deliberate leadership from your industry advisory group towards the activities in your proposal and in your project overall. There's also some other external partners you want to consider, such as consultants as well as external evaluators. From there, you have your team organized. Think about developing a concept paper. This doesn't have to be a final version when it's first printed, but collect your ideas together, and this gives you a starting point on engaging others internally and externally. The concept paper should include your big idea. What is the problem and why do you want to solve it? Why is it important, if you will? How will you solve the problem? Who are the key players, both internally and the partners externally? And how will the project and the broader college community benefit from this project? This is an iterative process, and as you engage different stakeholders, this concept paper will evolve and change, and it's meant to. Once you kind of have that concept paper shaped out, though, it allows you to go to other stakeholders, as I mentioned, and start researching more and finding out more and getting input on it. One of the big first steps I also tell colleges is to research what's been funded. Once you understand your concept and what area you're looking at, do some research on the nsf.gov/award search page. See what other areas have been funded and what other colleges have received funding in related projects. This can be a great way to form partnerships, and every college I've reached out to in this manner has always been very receptive to share their work, to engage in a conversation, and sometimes that's led into even more deep partnerships in this work. The other thing I'd say is figure out which national NSF ATE National Center most closely relates to the work that you're doing. The leadership teams at those national centers can be an excellent resource for guidance, and often they have incentives and mentoring programs that they can help you with as well in the proposal process. Once you've engaged the partners and have that concept paper into a revised draft, share it with the ATE program officers and get their guidance. They can be incredibly helpful with feedback and help better shape your proposal and give you some guidance as you move into the full proposal development phase. The other thing I'll mention is there are a ton of resources out there that can help colleges with ATE proposals. One of the first things you should do, and I encourage everyone to go visit the CCPI-STEM resources page. A lot of the following links and a lot of the links I've already referenced and information I've even referenced on this can be available through that page. Start there and kind of work your way through, understand some of the great articles that are there, some guidance that's there, and links to other programs. There are a lot of great mentoring programs such as the Force ATE, Mentor Connect, Mentor Up, and Pathways Innovation that all provide excellent mentoring mentors for the proposal process, and your college can get into those programs. A lot of those applications happen here April, May-ish, and so starting to look into those soon is really helpful to prepare yourself to potentially apply for those programs. They all have their own nuances as far as where their kind of focus area lies, either as far as discipline or how they're engaging the mentorship process. So look at each of them and kind of evaluate what looks best for your college. I know this is a lot of information and we're going through it very quickly. I'm trying to be brief, be bold, and be gone. So I just want everybody to know the slides today will be available on the CCPI-STEM website after this call, and encourage everybody to check out the links. The other last thing I had, and I know Dr. Rodriguez is on here as well, my counterpart here in some of this work. We are working on some grant modules that will be used in leadership doctoral programs as well as leadership institutes throughout the country for community college education and leadership education and help with funding issues. The 4 modules that we're working on, one is Introduction to Grant Strategy, the NSF ATE program. It's basically a fuller version of what we went over today. Grant partnerships, and the grant life cycle and deployment tactics, which is a little more detailed. These are something we're working on this spring, working on refining and hoping to deploy, and we're looking at other strategic ways to deploy them in creative ways in the future as well. nothing specifically to do on this. We just wanted to make everyone aware of what we're working on and that this is coming out. More information on these modules and the deployment will be available on the CCPI-STEM website as updates are released. And from that, I will hand it back over to Beth for Q&A.
Excellent, Shane. Thank you very much. So we're at the Q&A stage, but before we do that, we're going to launch a poll. So if you would take time to do that, I'll launch that in just a moment. But you can see all the ways that you can connect with the CCPI STEM project. You can go to our webpage. You can send leadership@ccpistem.org. We monitor that. We're on Twitter now if you want to follow us, like us, and we also are on LinkedIn. So just wanted to point those out. Now let me launch the poll. It won't take you long to do that. We appreciate the feedback so that we can make these better. We're going to have a series. Our next one actually is going to be on Wednesday, March 8th with Dr. Elizabeth Tellis, who is a founding director of the ATE program. So you don't want to miss that. We'll be sending out information about that. So as we're working, as you're completing the poll, I see there all the information's coming in. Let me now open it up to Q&A. So if you don't mind putting your question in the chat, since we have 104 people on the call, we're really excited about that. Then we'll address them as they come in. So any questions? Please go ahead and put them in the chat. And Fran, can you let that person in? I think we have our 105th person joining.
There we go.
Okay, looking at some good feedback here. We'll give you maybe another minute to complete the poll here, and I'll share out those polls. So any burning questions you want to put on the chat? Shane's a font of information. So we want to make sure we pick his brain today. Okay, we're going to close the poll in about, I don't know, 20-second countdown. How's that? Okay, we have some questions coming in, Shane, while we finish up the poll.
Sure.
Okay, so this is from Trina at WVU. AT emphasizes community colleges. Scanning awards, I see RIT, a university, has been awarded an award. How can universities participate in the ATE program? That's an excellent question. So Shane, you want to take that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So this is 2-year education focused and technician level education focused. And so some universities do have technician level degree programs that they can offer that are technician related. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I believe most of the 4-year programs do have access. There are some great 4-year partners that we've had working in the ATE program in other states as well. So it's not fully exclusive, but it's definitely targeted towards 2-year colleges.
Great. I just shared the poll results. Next question from Dr. Nancy Hope and Alexander. Let me have to move some things around here. After we prepare, hang on, pardon me. Okay, after we prepare our concept paper, where do we send it? To a program manager?
I assume this is with NSF. There are program officers for each discipline, and those are listed on the NSF ATE website. And you can identify a program officer, and there's usually contact information on the NSF ATE website that you can find, and that's where I would start. It's always been, if it's not the exact right person, a lot of times they'll be able to route it to the right program officer.
Okay. Our next question is comes from, lots of questions here. Gotta scroll up here. So Carolyn Green, do the proposals have to be purely research based for ATE?
No. I would argue that most of them are more application or deployment based and programmatic. Research and the evaluation of the work and obviously the dissemination of what you're doing is critical as far as part of the broader learning. But as you're looking through what you're working towards, it's creating 4-credit programs that are addressing the technician need. in the non-STEM areas. So it doesn't have to be as research-based as what some of the other NSF programs definitely are focused on.
Okay, another question here. Let's see, Hector Rodriguez, are there opportunities to volunteer as a reviewer and learn more about the process?
Within the ATE program, Dr. Hawthorne or Dr. Z, do you guys have any input on kind of getting into that reviewer? Usually, I know most of the folks that we've had review proposals have been a PI in the past.
I do. I actually NSF and particularly the ATE program are looking for reviewers. There are not enough reviewers. Yeah. So if you have been a community college educator in the STEM field, you can apply to become a reviewer. So you can, the best place to start is with Celeste Carter, who is the lead program director for the ATE program. And I can get that in her email address for you once we get through the rest of the questions. So yes, they need reviewers. So, and that's a great opportunity to learn more about the program and what reviewers are looking for. So it helps you actually develop your program. I've actually served as a reviewer for the ATE program since 2003. I know I just carbon dated myself, but it's a wonderful act to do. All right, Carrie, how might the CHIPS Act interact with NSF ATE grant program?
We've seen a lot of emphasis from our perspective. I mean, I haven't seen the direct interaction as far as the funding piece yet. Some of that's still being worked out, but there have been direct connections between, for instance, Intel's greater emphasis in the motive, some of the growth that's happened in the semiconductor industry is a great example. There's a Dear Colleague letter that was released last summer, where part of Intel's investment was towards the NSF programs, both the ATE program and I believe the STEM program. And so there is an additional Dear Colleague letter for a separate boost of funding for grants that are targeted in the semiconductor space. And so that's one way that I've seen a connection between it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that actually ATE is pushing synergy between those two.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then I'm going to go back to Kim. I didn't forget you. Shane, can you discuss colleges who apply for more than one ATE grant at a time?
Yeah, we've done that a few times. But the key is, I would say if it's your first time applying for an ATE grant, I would focus. But as you get experience with it, you start to get the rhythm. I would recommend you don't have the same group of leadership and faculty obviously working on multiple proposals. I think it's important to focus their efforts. But if you do have a large college that have multiple areas of faculty, maybe something in IT, something in manufacturing, and they both have strong different proposals that make sense to look at projects. It's just a matter of time planning and make sure that your college has the resources to support the faculty, and those faculty teams have the time to dedicate towards it. Those are some of the biggest things that we look at when we're looking at multiple grants in the same year.
Okay, very good. Let's see what else. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we submitted an ATE that was not funded. So participated in one of the mentoring programs and resubmitted. Got worse reviews than the previous version. That doesn't bode well, right? But this happens, right? Your thoughts on how best to respond to reviewer feedback in the next iteration?
There's, it is always a kind of nuanced thing of reading through the reviewer feedback. There's some that it happens to be somebody's specific skill set, or they might have a specific knowledge in one part of what your proposal is looking at. And so you do have to sift through it a little bit. And obviously the reviewers that you had this year might not be the reviewers you have next year. And so I think the way that I approach this is I usually look at the overriding things, the things that are similar across the reviewer feedback. If you had 4 different reviews and all 4 reviewers are identifying a gap, be sure you're addressing that gap. If one reviewer emphasizes one thing that's maybe a little smaller, there's always more information. You see a lot of review feedback that's, you need to include more information on this, or it would have been nice if they expanded more on that. But we do also know that there's only 15 pages of material that you can include. So there is a prioritization. The way I use it is to try to hone how I am presenting some of the information and make sure that if there's a theme that's spread throughout the feedback, I am definitely emphasizing that and bringing that up higher in the proposal kind of viewership. Maybe adding some keywords to specific sections, adding a chart if it makes sense. If there's some type of distinguishing you need to do with, here's what exists, here's what's going to be built, a kind of as is and to be model. So thinking through that kind of feedback, and yes, it is somewhat disheartening when you have two different groups of reviewers. You feel like you address the first group, and the next one finds kind of new things to address. But that's why it is kind of an iterative process, and hopefully each round your college has also advanced the initiative forward, and so in theory, things might be further along in the development process, but that's how we usually address it, is really try to find those themes across the reviewers.
Okay, very good. And it's some of it's luck of the draw,
It is.
And I guess the thing is, don't get disappointed or discouraged. Just become more determined. Okay, here's a question from Sheila Foster. Can you offer any best practices related to surveying industry needs for emerging technology education or technical education?
For serving industry needs, I guess depending on which way we're looking at this, if it's a deployment tactic, I think the experiential learning focus is an important one to include in any proposal, and thinking about ways that you can engage the employers earlier in different types of experiential learning. And so thinking through different tactics, that's one of the biggest things we focused on in a number of our NSF ATE grants, is how do we get the employers engaged earlier on, and even the awareness, the process of whether it's an internship, a flexible apprenticeship. There's a lot of different models out there, and experiential learning doesn't have to be a full-fledged co-op every time. There's a lot of kind of smaller versions of lab exercises, case studies that you can engage employers in and getting them involved. Another way is engaging employers in a more formal advisory group and have them really leading the project discussion. There's a great model that the Convergent Technology Center uses called the BUILT model, Business and Industry Leadership Team. And it really is it's an advisory team of industry, but it's really driving your next decision from their feedback, as opposed to building something and then asking them if this looks good. And so it's just more of the way in which you approach the industry piece. Those are two kind of best practices in different ways around how to engage industries.
Okay, I think we have about 3 more questions. We have another question from Trina. Would applications from CTC systems at the state level be appropriate too?
It looks like we got that question answered in the chat. It said, yeah, Shaka answered that the West Virginia Community College could submit a system. I'm not as familiar with the CTC system specifically, but yes, as if it's a system of community colleges, it looks like the system could potentially submit a proposal. Usually we've had, if there is a system, there's still been a lead organization that's been the lead applicant in something like that. But I'm not overly familiar with the CTC group specifically.
Okay. It looks like my colleagues have been answering questions in the chat, and I very much appreciate that, especially
Thank you.
Ashok. Are there any other questions I may have missed? If you wouldn't mind just putting them in the chat again, just because it's running here. Okay. We just had to thank Shane and Ashok. Trina. Any other questions, thoughts? What's on your mind? We're here to do the best to answer those. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, great information. Thank you, Dr. Hope. We appreciate your feedback on the poll. Thank you for doing that. I've already shared those results with our external evaluator who's on the call with us. Okay. I think we're still good. You see anything there, Shane?
That was all the questions. Do you need to share mentoring resources? Oh,
We could go back to that slide if you wanted to, Shane, if you
yeah.
rerun the deck.
It was two back here.
Yep.
And as I mentioned when we were on this slide, the CCPI-STEM resources, that first link, there are links to all these other links on that page too. So it's a good place to bookmark if you're getting started and want to kind of look at all these different resources out there and kind of engage the different mentoring programs. And like I said earlier in the presentation, a lot of the ATE national centers also are engaged in some of these mentoring programs that also have some of their own mentoring programs as well that can help. Yes, there are a lot of resources.
Yeah. And the ATE is a wonderful community, very welcoming. Everybody wants to help each other. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And if you're new, if you've never submitted a grant to the ATE program, that is the first track that Shane talked about. So it's a little less competitive and you can kind of get in on the ground floor. So if you've never submitted a grant to ATE, that's what we recommend. And a lot of those mentoring initiatives work toward that track one, new to ATE.
Yeah.
We also do the other tracks as well. So, if you're concerned, so here's the numbers, even though somebody didn't have a good experience there. So if you submit a proposal to NSF ATE on your own, which I did twice and didn't succeed, and then I got connected when I was at Union County College, and then I went through a mentoring program, Mentor Connect. I got it. So the numbers are, if you're on your own, you have about a 20% chance of getting funded. If you join one of the mentoring initiatives, you go up 70, 80%. So it really, really is beneficial to just be with a group of people who have been through this, learned it the hard way, if you will, failed forward several times, and now share their life experience and grants with that. Oh, Trina, can you talk about Creative Commons licensing with regard to curriculum development?
Actually, Dr. Hawthorne, I'd imagine you probably have some experience in this area.
Sure. So Dr. Z and I were on another NSF project where we delivered a lot of curriculum modules, and we use Creative license so that whoever adopted the curriculum could also have the right to adapt it to fit their local institution. So I think that is Creative Commons number 4. So if you just go on the web and search Creative Commons licensing, you'll see that there are different levels on that. So, and that's a wonderful way to disseminate. And yes, that is what the NSF ATE community wants you to do. Part of the proposal includes a very strong dissemination plan, and some projects do not, or proposals do not get funded because they do not disseminate their wonderful outcomes or the resources that they create. The other thing is if they don't have a strong evaluation plan, or how they're sustained after the grant funding is ended. So those are like the 3 pain points, if you will, for getting funded. So that's just a tip from an insider who's had a lot of pain with grant writing.
Yeah. And a lot of times, because those are sometimes at the end of a proposal, they kind of are the last things you start to look at. So it's important to really start framing out the full proposal and look at all the sections and make sure you're really addressing all of them well. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then Trina has a follow-up question. Will NSF fund updates to existing curriculum?
If you're enhancing a curriculum and adding some type of new technology, it doesn't have to be a full program that you're applying for. In fact, a lot of times that's more difficult to accomplish in the 3-year time period, depending on how full-blown you're doing with the development. But yes, an enhancement on a existing curriculum is absolutely something that can be funded. You need to show why it's innovative and that it's an industry need and that you have a gap right now that you're trying to address.
Okay, last call for questions, and then I think we'll end the presentation in the essence of time. So we're 34 after the hour, which is great. Good timing, Shane, and lots of time for questions. Oh, here comes something in the chat here. Thanks very much. Very helpful. Thank you for that feedback. We appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.